How do we know if we're live?
I think it.
Are we on?
I think we are. Yeah.
Starting strong. Oh, hello,
Oh.
everyone. Welcome. Oh, we're so glad you're here. This is so exciting. I'm Meg, also known as Meg's Tea Room on the socials, and I just want to thank you all for coming to our Cozy Fantasy Fellowship Book Club author event. Oh my gosh, this is so fun. Our book club on Fable began reading together in June, and we primarily focus on the softer side of fantasy, mainly cozy fantasy stories with lots of heart. And if you haven't already, I'd love you to join us and start reading and discussing with us on the Fable app. And you can find that link in my bio on TikTok or on Instagram. I'm not sure if we'll put it in the chat, but I don't know. Cameron, you let me know. I love the Fable app because it gives us an opportunity to read together through their collaborative ebook option, which is the coolest thing. And we're able to read and share annotations and start conversations right inside the book, like Wattpad for bestsellers. So thank you to Fable for putting all this together tonight. And I highly suggest jumping on and checking out the multitude of amazing book clubs that they have to offer. Okay, are we ready? I'm ready. Are you ready, Sangu?
Yeah.
Okay, I am so honored to welcome the incredible author of our latest cozy read, The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, Sangu Mandanna.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
So let me give your bio real quick.
Okay.
Sangu
Yeah.
was 4 years old. You tell me if this is correct. When an elephant chased you down on a forest road and you decided to write your first story about it. And 17 years and many manuscripts later,
Many.
Sangu signed her first book deal and now lives in Norwich. Yes,
Norwich.
Norwich, a city in the east of England with her husband and kids. Welcome, Sangu. I'm so happy you are here.
I'm so excited about this because I mean we've been talking back and forth
I
online
know.
for so long now that it's weird to just now meet in person,
I know. I know. I'm so happy right now. Overwhelmed.
But I'm also so excited because I mean, I love Meg's Tea Room. I love it so much.
That's so
Um, like it makes me so happy. And so I'm just so happy to be here.
Oh, that warms my heart. Thank you. I feel very honored. Wait, I need to know more though about this elephant that chased you down. Wait, can you expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, like I have some regrets about the fact that that is in my like bio because understandably everybody
Sure.
wants to know like what?
Yeah.
Um yeah, so I mean, I think most people know now that I grew up in the south of India.
Mhm.
And my dad still has a coffee sort of farm, and it's right on the edge of a national park, a big wild forest.
Wow.
And to get from the city where we lived to the farm, you had to drive through the forest. And
Yeah.
yes, there's many a wild animal to be seen, far fewer now. I mean, don't get me started on the whole climate change and like poaching and all that, but
Mm.
far fewer now. But when I was little, there were quite a lot. So, like tigers and wild elephants and bison and deer and all. And so what dad would do was that as we would drive by, he would slow down if we saw something sort of, lurking in the trees or not even lurking in the trees.
Sure.
And, we would have a look and then we would drive on. And one time he slowed down because we saw, quite obviously, they're quite big, an elephant. And what we didn't realize was that right behind the elephant was a baby elephant.
Oh, buddy.
And the mum elephant understandably was not keen on this,
Yeah.
growling machine sort of stopping um, mere feet away from her and her offspring. And so she started to run after us.
Oh my God.
And I'm not kidding. I literally just dove down, like, the footwell between the back seat and the front
Sure.
seat. Yeah, that was
Sure.
me. That was me just living there.
It's just
Um,
existing. Are you out of that now? I mean, or you feel like you're still living there a little bit sometimes?
I'm out of it now.
Good for you.
And it wasn't the only time that happened, but that was the most memorable one
Sure.
because it was like the first one I remember. And then as soon as we got to the farm, I got some paper out of my dad's desk and I wrote, "Today we drove through the forest and I saw an elephant and I was scared." Like SKED.
So,
And
does
that was
anyone
my,
have that page? Does anyone have that piece of
my
paper?
dad still does, yeah.
No way.
He does. He sent me a picture of it not that long ago. Do you know what? I'll send you the
Oh,
picture after
you need
this.
to post that. Yes, I would love to see that. That's amazing. Wow. Well, we're starting
Yeah.
strong with story. So here we go. We have a few burning questions for you, Sangu. I got so many comments. And so we're going to go through them. We're going to get through as many as we can.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to take our time. We're drinking tea. We're cozy. So, the Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. That is why we're here. It was our October book club pick. And I'm telling you, everyone loved it. And anytime
Oh,
I post about this book, my comments are absolutely flooded with praise. So congratulations on writing such a beloved story. We love it. So many of my followers that are reading this book, they're reading it for the first time this month. So for those who might not be familiar with your work, how would you describe the books you write? And is there a specific community that you write for?
yeah, I do write quite a few. I mean, I think the funny thing is that this is not my first book.
Yeah.
This was my first book for adults. And it is very much the first book that's like broken out.
Yep.
But I've had, what to say, 7 books before this. But the one thing, and I've written different sorts of things. I've written YA, I've written middle grade, I've written like a really sort of angsty space opera. I've written a sort of mythologically inspired middle grade that I hope is quite heartwarming. But I think the common thing with all of these books, even though they seem on the surface to be very different from Irregular Witches, is this idea of belonging, of finding your place, and of just sort of stories that center women of color, in particular girls of color, because most of my books were for kids, because that's something I didn't have when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And it's an important thing for me to write now.
So you use one of my favorite tropes, like you said, a found family. That is, I live for any book with found family. I think it is the coziest thing that can happen in a story. And it's the heartbeat of this book. So can you share a little bit about why that, you talk about personal experience. Was there personal experience that drew you to that theme? That you
Yes. But I would say probably not in like the most obvious way. So I think a lot of the time when people find their place with a found family, it's because they didn't have, like Mika, for example, does not have family, or at least what she recognizes as family, until she meets the sort of quirky inhabitants of Nowhere House. And she doesn't realize until we can be spoilery, right? Because
everyone's read it at this point. So yes, spoiler as much as you want.
So although we know later that Primrose is sort of family to her in a way that it didn't feel that way. So but for me, I do have sort of biological family that I'm very close to. I did grow up in what I think was quite a loving space, but I was also very young when I moved to England. And I think anybody who's ever experienced sort of being an immigrant will know that there is this constant sense that you don't quite fit in, you don't quite belong, you don't have a space. And finding your people, whoever they might be, becomes so important. And I think that's what I sort of drew from, that sense of loneliness and that sense of longing.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a gift. What a gift. Oh my goodness. So would you say that that was a big piece of the inspiration behind writing this story? I mean, what was it that inspired you was there a specific event or moment or person that drew you to creating these kinds of characters?
I think that was absolutely, like, just generally that sense of not belonging was a huge part of it. But specifically in the moment, I feel like I'd have to say it was COVID.
Really?
Yeah, because I mean, I started writing this sort of like from scratch, like the very beginnings of it. And it has changed since that first draft, of course.
Of course.
Like, I don't even want to.
Sure.
Uh,
Oh, I love authors. Bless y'all's heart.
but it was December of 2020. So, we were like 8 months
Yep.
into the pandemic, and we'd been through two big lockdowns, like long lockdowns. Here in the UK, we'd had like a sort of a brief loosening of restrictions that may or may not have been sensible, but anyway. And then we were back in sort of our bubbles and our lockdown like sort of things. And I think that, well, not only was it a very stressful time. I mean, at best, it was stressful. It was traumatic for everybody. At worst, you lost people, and it was horrible.
Yep.
And many of us were also caught it, and some of us. I mean, I did. My whole whole family did at the same time. Yeah, like 5 of us, 5 children. Like, we sent the tests off because I had a bit of a temperature, and I was like, fine, we better all test ourselves. And we did that online thing where you could like just put the test through, and then we
all of
got, like, 5 emails in a row going with each person like in the family's name, positive, positive, positive.
See,
I was like, oh God.
So you were in the muck of it. We were in the
muck of it, and that happened, I think, November.
Okay.
So right after that, I feel like I just wanted escape.
Yep.
And, I've always been a fantasy reader, all kinds of fantasy, love it. And I've always loved cozy fantasy, except I think we just didn't call it that ages and ages ago. Like Howl's Moving Castle, right? One of my favorite books ever. But I never would have called it a cozy fantasy until recently. Yep. But it is. So I think I just wanted cozy. And I love witches, so it was going to be witches. I also love the idea of like the feminine, that, you sort of intrinsically, the idea of women reclaiming their power that you get with witchiness. So it's going to be witches. And I think that loneliness plays such a big part, because when you've come sort of like, I think we can all attest to the fact that many months into a pandemic, you rediscover what it is to really appreciate human connection.
Yep.
And how desolate we were without it.
Man, and it's that the connection piece is what is so profound throughout this story. I think that you can tell now that I hear the inspiration of it, it makes complete sense when you see how these characters connected and reached out to one another. So one thing I love too is we touched on this for a minute about how you write diverse characters. They're incredibly diverse in this story, and you've been lauded, as this book has been lauded at least, as a great example of how to write diverse characters and worlds. So do you have any tips specifically for future authors on writing with inclusivity at the forefront?
I think it's easy to say, to just sort of let it come naturally. But the truth is that if you are sort of anywhere close to my age, so sort of in your late 20s, 30s, 40s, or older, that sort of writing inclusively might not necessarily come naturally to you, because you've been sort of conditioned with media that is not inclusive in the slightest. And so actually I would say the opposite, which is that put some thought, be deliberate in those choices, choose who and how you want to represent people, and be as sort of respectful as you can if it's not your lane, so to speak. I try personally not to sort of, it's sort of like the difference between including characters of different backgrounds and genders and sexualities and abilities, and and telling their stories. That, like, those are two different things.
Yes.
So like, this is very much Mika's story, and that's somebody I feel comfortable. That's someone's story I feel comfortable telling, because she is a lot like me. She's neurodivergent, she's brown, she doesn't feel like she belongs. But for instance, I would not have told Ian's story. He's there, he's a huge part of the book. I adore him, but apart from maybe like a scene or two here and there where we go into what life was like for him, I didn't feel like it was my place to tell his story.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is a big distinction for me. And I'm not saying that there's a right or wrong answer here. I'm just saying that for me, I feel like I need to, or at least I want to include people as much as I can,
Yeah,
but not co-opt their voices.
that's beautifully said. Yes.
Thank you. I feel like I sort of got confused and like rambled
No,
a bit.
you did it at all. You did it at all. No, that was beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, I think that'll be very, very helpful. What a good thing for authors to understand, because I know that conversation specifically in book talk comes up a lot, on how to do it with integrity and honor.
Yeah.
And so I think, yeah, I think you clarified perfectly. Don't stress. One thing I also love about the diversity is the diversity of ages. There's so many. I mean, this book spans ages. I mean, it's bonkers to me how you paired them all together, and every age is represented with so much vibrancy and care and life. So what was your intention behind this when you were building the characters?
To start with, I absolutely wanted to write a heroine and a love interest who were in their 30s. Because I mean, when I started writing it, I was 32 and I'm now 30. Wait, how old am I? Okay, I'm 35. I'm almost completely certain of this, but in my head, I sort of froze at 32. So who knows?
When you pass, I'm 37. When you hit, anywhere past
like, there comes 30, a point where it's just,
I don't care.
Yeah. I also feel like COVID kind of like changed time for me. So who knows?
Completely.
But the point being that I did want people who were in their 30s. Because the thing is that you don't always find love when you're young.
Yep.
Ish, like younger. I'm saying young as if we're not still young, but you know, like you don't always find it when you're 20. You don't always find it when you're 17. I was lucky. I was 22, 21, but that doesn't always happen. And I also feel like this book was so personal to me, that it was such a personal story that I was telling at a time when I needed that sort of cozy escape. That I also felt like I needed a character whose headspace felt like mine, who felt like someone who was in their 30s, who felt like she was not quite baked, but was baking, getting there. Her brain is fully cooked. The rest of her might not be, but and I think it sort of shows that you can still be in your 30s and 40s and still figuring things out, and there's nothing wrong with that. You could be, I mean, like Ian and Ken have it are so perfect, and they have each other, and they're so together, but it's not like they don't make mistakes. It's not like they've figured everything out. That's why they need Mika, because they haven't figured everything out. And I just also, like I come from I wouldn't say a huge family, but a family of like vastly varied ages. And I know people of vastly varied ages. And I just feel like I just wanted to have that variety. Kids are important to me. I have them. I love kids. I write for kids. So I knew I wanted to have children in the book. And I knew I wanted to have Ian and Ken are actually not based on, but very much inspired by an elderly gay couple that I knew very well growing up. And so, I just wanted these stories to not necessarily tell the stories, but just include a little bit of it.
I love that. And I think what was so beautiful to see or to read in the book was how every moment or every character had a moment of wisdom that they passed on, no matter their age. And so it was this beautiful reminder that all ages deserve a voice. All ages are worthy. They are filled with wisdom. We just have to open our ears and listen and see. It made me so happy to see that. It was so well done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for like noticing that, because I also think that like with kids, it's so easy to dismiss them.
Yes.
But I mean, as we all know, children sometimes come out with the wisest things.
Yep.
And and I just think that like you said, every age has its knowledge, has its sort of space that you're in. I feel like I feel like I don't know like all the things I'd like to know. I feel like I'm just sort of scrambling through each day and just trying to make it to the end of a day, right?
Right.
But I have no doubt that I may be somewhere in there that I've got something I can pass on to somebody that's useful, in the same way that anybody does.
Yep. I love that. One thing I also loved, I'm just gonna keep talking about what I loved in the book. I
Yeah.
love that this world has such defined rules for its magic system, because a lot of books do this very well. And some books I struggle because I'm like, I want more. I want to understand why that can't happen or that does happen. So can you tell us more about how you developed those rules and why you felt it was important to the story? Or is it just fun for you to do that part of it?
I mean, if you'd asked me about a year and a half ago, I would have said, oh, it's fun. It's just, I love doing it.
Okay.
But, and I'm sure we'll get to this bit a bit more later, but like having now spent a year trying to come up with a completely different magic system for a completely different witch book, I am like, yeah, I'm just like, I have like, where are ideas?
Okay.
They've all gone. Um, but no, but with Irregular Witches specifically, I knew that I wanted it to feel cozy, the magic as well, that I wanted it to be effectively, I knew from the start, even if I hadn't quite worked out the rules. And those did change quite a lot, like the actual manifestation of magic, where they're working with sort of like runes and how spells work.
Yep.
That kind of came later. But from the beginning, what I wanted was that idea that magic has always been Mika's one constant companion,
Family. Yeah. That's, yeah. Yeah.
almost like a sentient friend.
Mm,
And so it's mischievous. It almost does seem to have a mind of its own. It wants to be used by witches because it's drawn to them just as they are drawn to it. And it was also really important to me to make sure it was sort of rooted in the natural world,
yep.
because that I wouldn't say that I am, well, in fact, I would say I don't have a green thumb at all. I have like the blackest of black thumbs, the kind that just kills everything that is green. But I live in like Norfolk, this part of England where I live is sort of, which, is hugely a part of the book. It's wild, it's beautiful, it's that combination of the quintessential English sort of green fields but alongside the kind of blustery, cold cliffside beaches that
Yeah.
you kind of see in a Jane Austen. And the natural world is just such a huge part of, I think, not just Britishness, but also just all of our lives. And it just made sense to me that magic would be inextricably linked to that.
Mm. I saw that a
And
lot in the teas. The teas are
yes,
definitely where,
yeah,
yes.
absolutely. And that's not really that all that far from reality. Like we are constantly using like things that are from nature in our teas specifically, but also in just anything. And yeah, but like the root of it all, of the magic, and the fact that for a cozy book, it is quite a dark premise that like every witch is orphaned.
Yes, it is. Yes. But it
It
works.
is and that was a deliberate choice. It wasn't like I was just like, oh, fun, because it's not fun.
No.
And I know that like in children's books, there's often people, you're just trying to get rid of the adults as much as you can because the kids have to take center stage. But in this one, it was very much about tying into that theme of loneliness, of isolation, the fact that witches are supposed to be alone. And in the same way, it's sort of, you follow on from that. And then if there are too many together, their magic starts sort of gathering and acting up. And just basically everything about it screams isolation.
Yeah.
And it's all about everybody, like the witches in the book, Primrose unpacking her sort of lifelong trauma, Mika recognizing that it doesn't have to be one way. And and ultimately kind of making that choice. Like, yes, it's riskier if we're together, but is that not better than being alone?
Mm.
It's my own book and I can't even remember exactly, but I think there's something along the lines of, there's a line about how alone is how we survive.
Yeah.
Um, but Mika sort of counters that with, but it's not how we live.
Right.
And I feel like that sort of captures how, and the magic system was sort of meant to reflect that idea.
I love that. I love that, because even the magic itself came alive to the fullness of itself whenever it was more than one witch
Yes.
within it. Yeah. Oh, beautiful. I actually have a question I was thinking about when you're talking about children's books to an adult book. How was it going from writing multiple children's books in a row to writing Spice? What did that feel like for you?
I love how you went. It wasn't just writing for adults, it was just writing Spice.
Writing Spice specifically.
It's weird.
Was it intimidating or was it like freeing? What did it feel like?
I will say that for the most part, writing for adults is very freeing because I am an adult at the end of the day. And as much as I'd like to believe that I still have a lot of sort of childlike yearning for magic, and I am ultimately an adult. I am very all too aware of the fact that the world is not necessarily the most magical place. I mean, I would say right at this moment, it feels like the least magical it has ever felt.
Ever. Yeah. In our lifetime. Yeah. Yep.
And you know, like we're roughly the same age. We've seen like
yes.
Our entire lives have been dominated by one terrible world event after another, but it just things feel horrible right now. And during COVID, it obviously wasn't the same sort of thing, but it felt bleak in a way, because it was so uncertain. We didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know if you know, I know like I'm probably being a bit dramatic here, but you know, there was a point where we had no idea, and if there was going to end up being like you know, like one of those sort of post-apocalyptic plague stories where everyone's just, and suddenly infrastructure collapses. We don't have electricity. We don't have and boy, do I appreciate right now just how precious electricity is.
Right.
But yeah, and it was just this it was freeing to be able to put myself in a headspace that I'm already in and not feel like I had to censor myself. I know people have mixed feelings about this, and that is fine by me, but I am quite a sweary person. And so it was very freeing to be able to be like, I'm just going to just throw the swear words in. I just am. I'm not going to even...
Kids. Oh, it brought me so much joy. Kids were swearing.
And they do these things.
Do.
Yeah. And you would be, and honestly, some things that like, there's words I don't use that I have heard kids on my children's playgrounds, like the older kids saying, and I'm just like, oh boy. But, and I just, yeah, it is freeing. It is. And it's, but I will say that when you're working on two books at the same time, very strange.
Were you working on
going back. Yeah, I was working on like the sequel to my first middle grade novel around the same time I was editing Witches, and oh boy,
that'd be jarring.
Yeah, it was like constantly sort of being like, oh no, that's the wrong book for that sentence. Oops.
Awesome.
Funnily enough, though, my least favorite part of it is the spice.
You really, you did it. You wrote it well.
Thank you.
You really did.
I don't know how, but thank you. I love it. I love reading it.
Yeah.
I love books with varying levels of spice. I've read like the smuttiest things out there, and also like the least sort of smart on the spice level, you know? And I love it all. And I've always, I say always as if I was like 5, but no. For as long as I've read smutty books, I've loved them. I'm a massive romance reader. I hate writing it. It's so awkward. It's so cringe. It hurts my soul.
Oh, I'm excited. I'm excited to ask you more about your next book in a minute, but yeah, we'll get there. Okay.
Yeah, it hurts me. It does.
It hurts you.
And I suppose it's not even the actual writing of it, though I do sort of sit there. The problem is that I am very aware, in a way I wasn't 10 years ago, that what I'm writing, because And again, I'm well aware that I'm in a very fortunate position, but right now, pretty much everything I work on is something that's been contracted.
Hmm.
So I know that somebody is going to be reading it. So I never sort of write without that self-conscious awareness that someone is going to be reading this. And even if it's just my editor before things get changed. So I am just yeah, I'm just a little too aware, which means every time I write something that I'm just like, cringe, too cringe. Also, like, have I got the mechanics right here? Because it feels like if I read back this paragraph, there are three hands. And that doesn't make sense. No, I should.
Speaking of hands, okay, one thing I noticed, and you tell me if this is intentional. I noticed this in my reread. Jamie has a
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
I knew it. He has a thing. He hand
Of course he
clenches
does. Yeah.
when he's
Yeah.
feeling things, and this
That
is
is absolutely
right
100%
here, everybody.
an homage to Darcy, obviously.
We love. I love
Oh,
that.
Matthew McFadden. Anyway.
Anyway, okay, let's look at some
Yeah,
of the
I mean, that is
audience.
an iconic hand flex.
It
And
is iconic. People have it tattooed on their body. It's amazing. Yeah. Okay, so
love
let's
that.
see. Someone asked, are you a pantser or a plotter? As in, did you know the ending before you began the writing?
Both. I mean, not that I think I'm both a pantser and a plotter because I do always know the ending
Yeah.
before I start. Well, not before I start, but before I sort of, when I start writing a book, whatever the book is, whatever the subgenre of sort of fantasy or sci-fi, it's always, I tend to know who the main character is. I tend to know their story. I tend to know how I want that story to end or how it's going to end organically. But a lot of that sort of, I would say probably after the inciting incident up to kind of the climax, all of that is just up in the air. And again, because I'm contracted when I'm writing books at the moment, I tend to have to plot a bit more. I need to give an outline or a synopsis or just something to my publisher. And but even then, even when I've got like a 2-page outline with these are the main plot beats, I find that sort of the details work themselves out only in the writing.
Mhm.
And some of my best scenes and best ideas only happen when I'm actually like a third of the way through the book and I'm writing the scene and I'm like, oh my God, this scene would work so well if it turned into this. And actually, that's a really good idea. And for a brief moment, I pat myself on the back and then I finish a little bit more and then I'm like, ugh, I'm terrible at this. I should just quit. And it's just this emotional roller coaster.
I feel like you've described every author experience I've ever heard in a podcast or in an interview. This is just the way of being an author, yes?
Yeah, you sort of waver between thinking you're a genius and thinking that you should just quit and, hide in a cave. And, but yeah, so I think that becoming more of a plotter just because it is necessary to do this as a job.
Mm.
But absolutely, I don't think I could write a book in which every single thing is plotted out perfectly. I
Right.
need that sort of room for the story to breathe and change its mind and sort of,
Yep. No, that makes complete sense. Do you have any characters that you're the most proud of in this story specifically, or that just can you connected to maybe the most besides Mika?
Besides Mika, I love them all so much, and they're also, well, not Edward. Don't love Edward. I
He
think
got him.
Primrose, surprisingly enough.
Really?
In terms of who I'm proudest of creating, I think Primrose, because I think it's so easy, and Mika finds it easy as well, to dismiss her as cold and distant. And it's only when you understand how much her own trauma has kind of shaped her that you see that there is softness
Mm.
and kindness. And like she's not always very nice, but she is fundamentally kind.
Yes.
And I think I am sort of proud of how we see, even though she's not the focus of the book, even though she is like sort of like this, sort of like a boogeyman hanging over.
Looming presence over the whole book.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in spite of that, we sort of do get to see a journey for her, a little, we see growth. And I'm proud of that. I mean, I love all the characters and I love everybody at Nowhere House. Like, I adore them. But in terms of pride, I have a lot of pride in Primrose and sort of what I did with her.
I love that. What about Cersei? Was there anything that inspired that particular dog and personality? Do you have a dog? Tell us about that.
One of my, I think my brother was just born when we had dogs. We've always had dogs when I was growing up. I don't now, because my husband's allergic and I'm sort of slightly. But when I was growing up, we always had dogs. And one of the first dogs I remember was a golden retriever it wasn't called Cersei. He was a he, and he was called Renzo. And he was just beautiful, and he was so good natured, and he was so lovely. And so I think I always knew that I was going to have a golden retriever in this thing somewhere.
Beautifully done.
And they shed a lot, and I had to put that in because, oh my word.
I just loved how lazy that dog just wanted to lay around and just stay in the library, give me a little sun patch, and he was good to go.
In terms of personality, I would say Cersei and I are probably closest.
You know what? I related actually a lot to Cersei now that I think about it too.
Yeah,
You're right.
Just want to lie around, just let me sleep.
Love
Also
it.
shed a lot, you know.
Yep. So if you had to cast the characters, there's been a few fan casts I've seen floating around, but if you had to cast them or any of them in particularly, do you have any actors in mind?
Well, I mean, Ian McKellen, obviously. Like, there is just there is no other alternative to that. Like,
Yes, 1000%.
Yeah. I sort of waver on Mika because I think that, and I'm actually like so happy about this. I think for the first time there are quite a few sort of South Asian actresses who would work of the right age and things like that, which is great because they didn't used to be. And I think sort of like Anya Chalotra from The Witcher. Like, she is like, you don't see it a lot in The Witcher because Yen is very intense.
Yeah.
But she has the most like radiant smile, and like she just sort of screams sunshine when she's smiling. So I think that she'd be perfect.
Amazing.
Whenever people talk to me about this, they always say Jamie Dornan for Jamie. And I think people think that was what I was inspired by, but it wasn't actually, even though coincidentally he is from Belfast and he is called Jamie. But no, I always thought about like Colin O'Donoghue, who was Hook in Once Upon a Time.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I think he's Republic of Ireland Irish, not Northern Irish, but he, like, I don't know, just get the vibe. There is a Jamie vibe there. There's a GIF, you know, I still don't know. There is a moving picture that I see on Pinterest a lot of Hook in like, and it's just his face and his like hand. He's just like pinching his like bridge of his nose in exasperation. And that's so Jamie that I'm just like, yep, there he is.
I love it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what is coming for you and your writing. Is there a new book on we already know there's a new book coming. Can you give us any updates, any little tidbits on the story, the release, the connection to the is it a sequel?
Okay, I can tell you it's not a sequel.
Okay.
Okay. It's not even a companion. It is sort of, it's an unrelated, and I will say, before I sort of get into that, I will say that this is not me saying that there's never going to be a sequel, because I get asked this a lot. And there is absolutely space, and I would love to write a sequel to Irregular Witches, but I'm very much at a point now where I want to wait until I have the right story, rather than just do it for the sake of doing it.
Sure.
I mean, I do like the idea of sort of People have asked me if I'll do like a little short story about the different characters. And I like that. But again, like I said before, I don't want to sort of co-opt anybody else's stories.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so the new book, not a sequel, not a companion, but a cozy, witchy fantasy.
And in keeping. We've got a
In
B&B
keeping,
situation.
yes. So I mean, like it is a contemporary fantasy, but it's the classic fantasy trope of the cozy inn or the cozy tavern. And I just wanted to sort of play with that. And yeah, so it is very much, I would say that in terms of sort of like theme and vibe, it's very much like Irregular Witches. It just happens to not have any of the same characters or the same sort of universe. It's set in the northwest of England. The main character, Sarah, she is she's the grumpy. Actually, there isn't really a sunshine in this one in terms of the pairing. It's more like icy and grumpy. So Luke is a historian, and he's sort of a magical scholar historian. So his sort of field of study. They're both witches. In this world, like any and all genders can be witches.
Okay.
And they are both witches. He is a magical scholar with like a field in history, and she is a grumpy innkeeper who was once one of the most powerful witches and is now almost powerless because she resurrected her great aunt from the dead and sort of used up all her magic on that. And also accidentally in the process resurrected her great aunt's pet rooster.
Great.
So, but unfortunately, as you will see if you once you read the book, unlike great auntie Jasmine, who was only dead a few minutes when she was resurrected, Ruru, the rooster, was dead a full 3 years and is therefore a skeleton.
Wonderful.
And it is rather hard to hide that he is, in fact, a reanimated, like, dead. Yeah. Yeah.
I cannot wait. I cannot wait. Will there be any romance in this book? Can you spoil that at all?
Yes. I don't think it's going to be spoilery to say that Luke and Sarah are going to have a romantic. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I'd call it a subplot. It's probably halfway between a subplot and a plot.
Sure.
But there is also a subplot between Great Auntie Jasmine and Matilda, who is a little old lady who just wants to live like a hobbit. Like she is 70 something. She has moved to the inn. She's decided it's the perfect place for her.
Squatting.
She just wants to be left in peace to like drink her tea, eat 8 meals a day, and grow her vegetables.
Love her.
And and she gets very annoyed when people want to like interrupt this idyllic existence. She also happens to be, wildly in love with Jasmine, but Jasmine, who has a lot of trauma in her past and who is disabled, and because of her disability has had a lot of trauma in her past, doesn't really recognize that this little old lady is in love with her. And yeah, I really wanted to do a little bit. It is very much a subplot because, again, not a story I want to kind of co-opt, but it means a lot to me to see these two sort of grandma-aged women finding love. Yes. And recognizing and being at peace with their sort of queerness. Yes. So yes, there is romance in the book.
I love this. I can already tell. Oh, they're going to be my comfort characters for a while.
I do love them.
I can tell, which makes me very excited to read it. And what is the release date on this story?
April.
We've heard April. Yes.
We've heard April.
Yes.
I think that might be pushed back.
Okay.
A little bit. I don't know when to yet. It won't be by a lot. It is very much a case of me being a lot slower than I hoped I would be. And I will say that the fundamental problem here is that, and this is a very good problem to have, but the fundamental problem here is that I really should have written all of this before Witches came out, because now I can't write anything without thinking, is this going to be as good? Will people like this? Is this too much like it? Is this too different? and I'm just overthinking everything, and it slows things down.
We beg of you not to. We just give it to us. We will love it, I promise. We have so much faith in you. And I just can't see. Yeah, just know that we will accept whatever you offer us, and we will accept it with so much joy.
Thank
Just
you.
full confidence in you moving forward. Full confidence. You have set, I know it's intimidating setting a precedent like this where generally, I mean, genuinely everyone loves this story, but I'm telling you, whatever you put out, it's a gift. You have a gift. You have a gift.
Thank you.
Writing with your heart the way you are, I know without a shadow of a doubt, it will do amazing, and it will touch so many people. That's what has been so impactful and so beautiful to see about this story, is how it's impacting. It's going beyond just a cozy read, and it actually is touching people on a deeper level, which is beautiful. I don't know if that was intentional. I mean, it feels like it was, because of your writing, out of this heart.
I wouldn't say that it's what I expected to happen, but it's I hoped, because again, it is such a personal story to me, and it is. And the thing is that I always feel like I have to add this caveat, because it's so easy to dismiss fluff. I love fluff, but sometimes you want your fluff to have that little bit of poignancy, if that's what I'm looking for. And obviously there is a time and a space when you just want the fluff, and there's many a time when I do. But for me, this was such a personal story that I knew I couldn't write it any other way, and so I hoped that there were, one of the things that I've loved most about it is the number of people, because we never actually say that Mika is neurodivergent, but the number of people who have reached out to me and said that, like I had a message sort of not even that long ago, from someone saying, I'm about halfway through the book and Mika feels so neurodivergent to me. Do you think that was deliberate? And then right after that, I just finished and I saw that you are neurodivergent. You did that on purpose.
Did that on purpose.
I was like, yeah, because I mean, it's not something I didn't know for sure. I wasn't diagnosed until a couple of years ago. And I didn't even know, I didn't even know it was a possibility until COVID, when, there was a lot of, I think during COVID, we all learned a lot on TikTok.
Yeah.
Like there were lots of like exercise videos of how to keep active when you're stuck at home, and like lots of food videos, and we were learning things. And one of the things that I kept falling into without realizing that my algorithm kept throwing it up was that it was, ADHD in women. I was like, huh. Oh, right, I see. Yeah.
That check.
Yep.
Yep.
Those like put a finger up things.
Yes. You're like, oh no.
And there was me like, oops. Or put a finger down, whichever one it is, you know what I mean.
Yep.
And I just think that, I don't know, I just feel like when I write, if it needs to be personal to me, because I feel like if I don't care about this story, why would anybody else care about this story? And like, with the new one with A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping, it's sort of like Sarah has depression, and we sort of meet her in the present day with her depression being treated. So she's not in the woods, so to speak, but she is like, she's always going to have it. I'm always going to have it. And it was something that, again, very personal to sort of go into that idea that the depression is both circumstantial and chemical, and and there's no shame in it. It is a thing that happens, and and it sucks when you're struggling with it, but it's also if you have the ability and you're fortunate enough to have the support or the treatment or whatever it is that works for you, you can come out the other side. Like like I'm a very big believer that the only way out is through the tunnel. So
gosh, I can't wait to read this story.
I feel like I'm overselling it now.
You're not. I promise you, you're not. You're just it again. It's the connection piece. I think anyone can write a story, but it's there's just something very generous and something that's to me over the top when an author takes something that is so personal and is able to put that into their story and is brave enough to do that. Because I know that it takes a lot of courage to be able to talk through those things and work them out.
But I think, again, I feel like it's something I may not have done 10 years ago.
Right.
It's something that having, like now that I'm in my 30s, a bit more settled into myself, I am sort of embracing the things about myself that I struggled with, like my undiagnosed neurodivergence that I just thought was me being lazy, or me just being, all the usual tropes of like you think something's wrong with you when in fact you either have a condition or you have an illness or whatever. The point is that, and I feel like I'm finally at that place where I can talk about these things without shame, that internalized shame. And it's that weird sort of disconnect between your head intellectually, there's nothing wrong with this, know that it's not your fault.
Yep.
But unpacking that emotionally is really hard. And I don't think I could have been so honest about these things 10 years ago, because I think there was still a lot of shame wrapped up in it.
Yep. Gosh, yes. But I think it's so interesting when you do get to that place where you can start working it out on the page.
Yes.
Because it reminds us all that we're all in process.
Yes.
Nothing's necessarily resolved. There's a lot lives are being lived fully with these things still, they aren't necessarily blocks. They aren't necessarily holding them back. It's beautiful. You did a beautiful job with that.
Thank you. I do feel as well that because like you said, we're always in process. I think that in 10 years, when I'm in my 40s, I'll probably look back and I'll think, I still had a long way to go when I was in my 30s. But, I think we're always, and I feel like the things I'm working out on the page, I might not necessarily agree with them in 10 years time.
Yep.
Or I might feel differently, or I might feel like I'm a step further along and you can take it a step further. But I do think that I don't think I would be capable of taking it any further now, because you are where you are in that journey. And and that's fine.
And that is the
fine
journey
to be in
being
different
a human. Yeah.
I think sort of like with Mika and Jamie, for example, they are both in very different places in their journeys with trauma.
Yes.
And he's sort of further ahead. He has healed more. He's had that chance, and you can see why he's had that chance. But that doesn't mean that he's done. And we see that. We see that he is still also has some monsters under the bed that he needs to clear away.
I love this. This is so okay. So on the topic of this, do you have any advice? And this will be our last question. If you have any advice for authors that want to either write in the cozy fantasy genre or do more of this, is express more of themselves and more of their heart and put more of their personal story into their stories, what would you tell them?
Well, to tackle the second one, because I think that's the trickier one, really.
Yes.
I think it's hard because it's so easy to say, just, be honest, just write what feels right to you, write what feels authentic. But sometimes we don't know. Sometimes we think we feel one way and we don't. So what I would say is that if you are putting something personal on the page, if you are working through something on the page, maybe be kind to yourself. Give yourself the grace to recognize that, you might get something wrong. You might find that in 6 months' time, you wish you'd written it a bit differently. But again, you can only write what you are in the moment, and just forgive yourself for those mistakes if you do. And the thing is, we will. We're all going to make mistakes.
Right.
I haven't really reread any of my old books, but I know that there's a couple of things in my very first book that I would change now. Like nothing big, but just like I feel differently about things.
Yep.
And so, forgive yourself if you make those mistakes, and allow yourself to make them, to be, if you want to be personal, if that is the choice you're making, allow yourself to do it in the way that feels right to you and not necessarily in the way that you think you should.
Mm.
And for cozy fantasy, first thing I would say is read as much of it as you can. But what I would also say is don't feel like you have to, because the thing is, like, I love Legends and Lattes, and I don't think I need to sort of, tell you about like all the very many virtues of Legends and Lattes.
Sure.
But but I do feel, and I'm sure you've seen it as well, that because of the success of Legends and Lattes,
Mhm.
there's I think a lot of sort of up and coming newer writers think that the only way that they can write cozy fantasy is to sort of fit that template.
Yep.
And I mean, you're never going to sort of write the same book. But I feel like if that is what you want to do, if you want to write cozy fantasy, do it your way.
Yes.
Because as we've seen, books that we never would have called cozy fantasy 10 years ago, we are calling them now. And it is such a new label for a very old subgenre of books that there is no one way to do it. Like, I genuinely don't think, like, I often get asked, because I guess because Witches came out same year as Legends and Lattes, and there's sort of like a handful of books that people point to as cozy fantasy. And so I get asked, like, how do you define it? I'm just like, but it's very different.
It's so, yeah.
And I know you've had these discussions as well.
Oh,
Like,
so
you've
many,
talked
yes.
about, and some people might think that a cozy fantasy needs to be completely sort of
Trauma-free.
trauma-free.
Yep.
And some people think it doesn't, and that's fine. Like, it is about what feels cozy to you.
Yep.
And there is no real wrong answer. And so I think that's what I would say is just don't try to force yourself to fit one particular like template.
Yes, I would love for there to come a day where we see more cozy fantasy authors experimenting with wider worlds, maybe some travel, maybe leaving the tavern, leaving the tea room, leaving the cafe, and seeing where else we could go with this genre. Because it does get repetitive as someone who reads primarily. It's like, well, we've already seen this, we've already seen this. So that's, I think, too, why your book was such a breath of fresh air in the midst of this genre booming like it has. You've shown us a different world and a different way to do it, which is very exciting. Yeah.
I think there's also a lot to be said for that literal journey. Like, I mean, don't ask me how this makes any sense, but I think this book club of all book clubs does not need me to tell you that, like, Nettle and Bone is cozy. But somehow, like, what? How is it, how yet somehow it is? I mean, like, if we listed the content warnings for Nettle and Bone,
we did. It's I mean, yes, it's very intimidating.
Thematically, it is really dark.
Yes.
But for some reason, that weird, quirky, oddball group of people going on a literal, like, road trip, fantasy road trip, feels really cozy and funny and warm. And I just adore them. And I feel like maybe that's why it feels cozy. It's because we love these people and we want to be with them. But not necessarily live in that world.
No, I'm like, not really with them, but we want to see more of where they're going.
I would like to see them.
Yes.
I would like to be their friend in spirit, but not actually be there.
Well, you guys, oh my goodness, we've busted through an hour. I could ask 5 or 6 more questions I have on here, but we just do not have the time, unfortunately. But hopefully, I would love to. I mean, obviously, we will be reading your book for our whenever it comes out for our book club. So everybody get ready for that. And I would love to bring you back at some point.
Oh, I would love to
discuss that as we launch. That would be very exciting. But it has been the joy of my life to have this conversation.
It's been a joy for me.
Thank you so much. I just love that we get to celebrate this book together. And I just so appreciate the time that you gave us. It has been a gift.
Thank you for doing this. And, thank you to the whole book club for, like, reading the book this month. the end of last month, like so it was towards the end, I was like,
Yes.
oh, Meg's got a cozy book club. I'm gonna join. And then you announced the book, and I was like, I'm no, 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 no.
No, I'm not gonna join
I'll wait
yet.
till next month. And then
There
I'll
you go.
join.
There you go.
The
Come on
awkward
the
would be too
notice system.
acute.
Yes. Well, you can find out more about Sangu at her website, sangumandanna.com. Yes. Is there
Yes.
anything else you'd like to plug or any other socials you'd like to share?
I'm also on Instagram, just my name, at Sangu Mandanna. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm so happy that we got to do this. And thank you all so much. And everyone who came, thank you.
Yes. And thank
And
you for
Meg
offering up
and
so
Fable.
many good questions. Yes. Thank you, Fable. Thank you so much for helping us put this all together. It was all them. I just appreciate them so much. But yeah, it's been a joy. I appreciate you guys. That is all for tonight. And I will see you in the tea room. We will see you, Sangu, on Instagram. We love you all. Bye, guys.
Bye bye, everyone.